cup of coffee is a special treat, especially when it helps birds. That is really neat.
Thank you for tuning in to Hannah and Eric Go Birding, a podcast by birders for birders.
I'm Hannah and he's Eric.
And we created this podcast to share adventures, sometimes misadventures, and opinions that we have on different birding topics. We're definitely not experts, and anything that we discuss that might be controversial, I want you to remember, their own opinions, they might be different from yours.
So there's this German word that I keep running across, like especially this time of year on Facebook, and I'm totally gonna butcher how to say it. So I apologize. I can speak a little bit of German, but this one was not one that our teacher taught us. But it's Zugunruhe.
Zugunruhe.
Yeah, which translates roughly to a period of migratory restlessness that animals experience, particularly birds. And it just feels like that kind of atmosphere lately. Like where we live, the winds kind of have shifted and it's more fall-like. And I get that like restlessness.
Yeah, I mean, weird things have been... There was a Scripps Mirrorlet just found at the river yesterday.
Yeah.
So, weird things. And not that they're part of like a migratory restlessness, but
this is
weird things happening.
Well, this is always the time of year that like a horned puffin washes up on the beach.
That's true.
In this area. So, yeah, it's a changing of the seasons, even though like fall doesn't technically start until later in the month.
Even though today and tomorrow we're supposed to have like record highs in temperature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's still, I mean, it's got that like weather conditions that just feel like suddenly different.
Yeah.
And somebody was mentioning that they saw a school bus yesterday in the Portland area that came down to stay with us. And I haven't even noticed a school bus. So I don't know if our kids aren't going to school yet or if I'm just not up at the appropriate time to see it. Our cats haven't been bugging us to get their backpacks on and get to class.
They haven't. They're not.
They're bad cats.
Yeah, they probably wouldn't go if we told them anyways.
And just as a reminder, if you want to support our show, you can buy us a coffee or you can sponsor us through our Venmo, which, all of it's Hannah and Eric Go Birding. Pretty easy to find. Yeah. But we want to thank someone who donated a ton recently.
Yeah, very generous, and thank you very much. That's much appreciated, and it went towards buying some stuff for us to go down to Brazil and donate to the community that we're going down there to help kind of foster more guides in the Manaus area.
Yeah, and, we just want to thank everybody who has contributed to that, I guess, campaign or that effort. So we have, just a number of different things that we're going to bring with us. We have some laser pointers, a speaker, a bunch of books, and binoculars, and also a couple cameras. And we want to thank, you all for helping us with this. Also, the American Birding Association, they have a birders exchange program that you can donate your old supplies to if you have an old camera sitting around and, you want to get rid of it and give it to a program that'll help. They'll take that kind of materials, and so they have supplied us with a bunch of stuff going down, so we're very grateful to the American Birding Association's Birder Exchange Program for that. And also Koa Sporting Optics, they have generously donated a number of binoculars too that will be taken down, so we're very grateful to you all for helping us support birders in other areas.
Yeah, super exciting to be able to bring all that stuff down to them.
So another thing we wanted to mention is that the October Big Day is coming up, and that's with eBird and Global Birding.
Just a little bit more than a month away. We're getting there.
Yeah, so that'll be on October 12th. And as we have in the past, we'll put together a informal virtual team and see how many birds that we can find. And we usually end up in the top 10, which is pretty exciting for, a mishmash of birders getting together and trying to find birds. So,
getting together virtually.
Yeah. So we'll make sure to post that information as we get a little bit closer on Facebook and other socials. And we'll also post some information too on our website that you can access through the show notes. So we'd love to have you on our team. It's really easy to participate. You just need a bird 5 to 10 minutes on October 12th and submit your eBird list and then share it with Go Birding Team.
All right, Hannah, you've got 2 other podcasts. In between the weeks of Hannah and Eric Go Birding, Hannah releases an episode each time. One came out last week, Women Birders Happy Hour, and one comes out next week, Bird Nerd Book Club. So last week, Women Birders Happy Hour, who'd you have on with you?
So I had Renee Rousseau, who is a birder based in South Africa, and I was really excited to talk with her. She has just done so many cool things, and she lives near-ish Kruger National Park, which I'm hoping we can go to in January when we go to Flock to Marion. We'll see if that works out, but yeah, it was really cool to talk to her about all of the interesting birds and birding down in South Africa.
Yeah, and then next week, you read a book and interviewed the author. What book did you read, and who was it by?
So the next Bird Nerd Book Club will feature Lillian Stokes and Matt Young, who are putting out. It's about a week and a half or so until their Stokes Guide to Finches of the U.S. and Canada come out, which is
another specialty guide.
Yeah, and we got an advanced copy of it, and it's just a beautiful book, and it's really cool how they include all these stories about the birds and seeing them in there. It's part like narrative and part factual information, and so it's a really cool piece of work that they've come up with. So, Eric, we're going some places.
Yes, we are. So, in a couple of weeks, we're going to Brazil. So, the Amazon Birding Expedition Brazil for Women. Hannah is part of the organizing team for that, and we're going down there for that. I'm going to be tagging along and then going off and doing my own thing, separate from her group. That's September of this year, so just a couple of weeks away. The Rio Grande Valley Birding Festival, the first week in November. There are still a couple of spots left on our trips, and then there's a handful of other trips that still have some spots available. So if you haven't registered for the Rio Grande Valley Birding Festival, I'd get a jump on it, because most of the really hot in demand things are either full or close to full.
Yeah.
Already.
But that doesn't mean that the other trips aren't great.
Oh no, they're all fantastic. You're in the Rio Grande Valley. It's fantastic birding. Exactly. The Morro Bay Birding Festival in January, and then also in January the Flock to Marion cruise is where we're going down to South Africa to go down to an island off the coast of South Africa that has lots and lots of albatross. And
we have a couple episodes from our past Flock to Marion that we went to. So if you want to learn more about that trip, check that out. And that's with BirdLife South Africa.
Yes. Very, very exciting. So, September Bird Nerd giveaway.
Yes.
We've got some stuff to give away. We have some coffee from a small family-owned coffee plantation in Costa Rica that is honoring all of the bird-friendly and organic stuff without the certifications. Without the certifications. But they're participating in all of the things you would expect a bird-friendly coffee plantation to participate in, and they are doing fantastic. In this episode, we'll talk quite a bit about this plantation, and then we're also giving away a species pamphlet of mammals and reptiles and all the general big ticket things that you can see in Costa Rica.
Yeah, which is like one of those laminated.
Yeah, one of those trifold, fourfold, whatever they are. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what we're asking you to do, and we're extending this one a little bit longer than we normally do. So this one's, the deadline is October 1st. We'll announce the winner I think the episode is October 3rd that comes out, but that's just because of travel situations. So anyways, what we want you to tell us is, what is something you do to make your life more bird friendly?
Yeah. So whether it be dots on your windows, or you changed what coffee you buy, or whatever it is.
You tried to walk more instead of using your car.
Whatever it is that you think that you're doing to make your life a more bird-friendly life.
Yep. So tell us by October 1st. You can social media us. You can email us, whatever, and let us know what you're doing. So, to get into it, so we did these, I think we explained it, we did these episodes a little in reverse.
Little flip-flopped order.
Yeah.
We like to mix it up every now and again.
Yeah, sure, just to confuse the heck out of us. So anyways, this is about when we first arrived in Costa Rica. So we finished work. We had to clean a bunch of hotel rooms here where we live on the Oregon coast at our family-owned hotel, and then just raced up to Portland for our midnight flight.
It wasn't really a race up to Portland.
I guess you're right. We stopped and had lunch.
We stopped and had lunch and kind of hung out. It was a leisurely drive to the Portland airport because we didn't have to leave until midnight.
Yeah, the flight options weren't very great. It was either leave at 5 o'clock in the morning on, Saturday, or midnight that night.
It's very first world problems, but Portland has weird times for if you want to catch international flights. There's not a lot of international flights out of Portland, and usually you have to end up flying somewhere else before you fly down to whatever international destination you're going to. And so then you have to fly at some weird times in order to land at a regular time to fly that international flight. It's a very first world problem, but
yeah,
it is what it is. So we cleaned rooms. We I think we ended up checking in some people too before we had to leave.
Probably.
Yeah, because we didn't have to leave for a while, but we worked a full day and then went up and got on a plane at midnight to fly down to San Jose.
So our first flight from Portland to Houston, because that was our connection, was super packed, and we didn't really get much sleep, which our plan was to like sleep on the plane, which we're in our 30s, so sleeping on the plane is not as restful as it was when we were in our 20s. But
it's never been restful.
We do what we can, so then we can take the most advantage of it.
Yeah. Well, if you're traveling somewhere, you want to do stuff, or at least us, we want to do stuff while we're there. So sleeping while we're there doesn't make sense.
Well,
like,
also,
let's just do stuff while we're in a destination.
We were also arriving at 10 o'clock in the morning, so it's like, we have to sleep somewhere, or else we're gonna get there and just
crash.
Yeah. So, anyways, our flight from Houston to San Jose was basically empty, so I slept pretty well on that flight. You don't seem to think you did, even though you were snoring the entire time.
Oh,
so.
I'm sure I was snoring the whole time.
Yeah, you just snore for fun.
It's a hobby of mine.
So anyways, we arrived at San Jose at 10 o'clock in the morning, got to the rental car company, which is actually really easy to get to.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, literally. So if for anyone who hasn't been to Costa Rica or hasn't rented a car in Costa Rica, it is I would almost say unreasonably easy. So I booked it ahead of time with Enterprise, walked out of the airport. There's a shuttle right there waiting for us. Or not waiting for us, but a shuttle ticket to the rental car place.
There was a station inside. Mm-hmm. So we walked to that station, said we have a car with Enterprise, and she was like, "Oh, okay," and she walked us over to the van. Yeah,
and then hopped on that van shuttle, took it over 2 miles away or so, mile away from the airport, and got our car. We were out of there within 15 minutes.
There's a huge rental car facility.
Oh yeah.
And it was actually pretty reasonable compared to some places that we rent.
Yeah, it was very inexpensive.
Yeah,
it's so when we've been to like the Rio Grande Valley, and we've had to rent before in the Rio Grande Valley and in San Diego, and for a week in Costa Rica, it was like $100.
Yeah,
and it's like $60 a day in the U.S. in a lot of places. So it was very reasonable. Renting for almost a full week for $100. And
the rental car agency is open 24 hours, which is really nice. Some places that you rent cars, like they have certain hours, they're closed hours.
Yeah, like, and then you have a weird thing of how to return it if your flight's at a weird hour, which our flight home was going to be. We were leaving at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
So it was going to be a weird hour. We had to get to the airport by like 3. So it was very good. It was very convenient that the Enterprise is open 24 hours. So that was a big relief right off the bat. So we got our car, like 15 minutes, got our car. We were on the road, headed east to get out, because we had an appointment at Cafe Cristina, which is a cafe / coffee plantation, which is where the coffee came from for our giveaway. So we had a 2 o'clock appointment out there, so it was like, well, we're 10 a.m., 2 o'clock, that's 4 hours for us to get over there. Let's make our way over so we're close, so we don't have to run into any kind of traffic. So we got on the road and started headed east.
So I found Cafe Cristina because I was just looking, we had some time in San Jose, and so we were trying to figure out what to do that day, and we were like, okay, well, it's too far to go to like Monteverde, it's too far to do this, too far to do that, and then I started thinking about like bird-friendly coffee, and so I Googled, bird-friendly coffee locations in Costa Rica, and found none.
Yeah, so the bird-friendly certification, there's a financial investment involved in it, and there's also some things that you have to do that take you above and beyond, that a lot of Costa Rican plantations don't do, and then a lot of them that are doing that stuff don't buy into the program because it's just not. It hasn't been marketed as well. And we talked with the owner or the son of the owner at Cafe Christina extensively about this, and it's basically the U.S. market isn't buying at the rate that makes it financially feasible to do in Costa Rica right now. That's kind of the way he explained it to us, that it's just they can't sell it at that same rate, so it's just not, the value isn't there yet. I think it will be. It's just not there yet, and in order to continue being able to feed their families and stuff, like they have to do what they have to do to keep
Sure.
food on the table.
Yeah, and so like I said, I Googled it, and it popped up with Cafe Christina. Not that it was bird friendly or anything, but just that it had bird in the the website and coffee. And so that connected the dots, and I scoured the website to see, like, why isn't this bird friendly certified? And I looked at the Smithsonian website because they have a map of all of the locations that are certified bird friendly, and that was what was interesting, is that Costa Rica was like a huge empty spot. In that there was a lot in, like, Colombia and some other places, and like maybe Ecuador, I can't quite remember, but anyways, it was like obvious that was missing. And so I really wanted to investigate why the Smithsonian didn't have locations there. But also, we wanted to go to a bird-friendly coffee location, and we've toured coffee plantations before, but they're much more like developed and like obvious tourist trap sort of things. So it was cool to find this one, and I had messaged them through the website because it said they do tours, and I was like, what's the deal with the tours? How do we get on it and everything? And then I made a connection another way through Ruth. I think it was Ruth the Jacanas that helped me coordinate with the owners of it to get on a tour. But then, like, a moment later, after I had messaged them on WhatsApp, it came through on the email about the tour too. So that was really cool that we were able to set that up so we could go and explore. But like Eric said, before we even got there, so that was our destination. But we hit traffic. Obviously, there's a lot of traffic in San Jose.
Lots of traffic. San Jose is a big city, so you end up with a lot of traffic and a lot of people that are driving. I think of driving in Central America and South America, and a lot in Asia too is very similar. Is you're looking out for yourself. You're looking out for number one. There's general rules to the road, and then after that, it's you're looking out for yourself. You don't bother with what everyone else is doing. Like you avoid them, but you like as opposed to driving around in the U.S. where speed limit's 25, you're going 25, and there's a yellow line down the middle of the road. You don't cross that yellow line. You stay in your lane. It's a lot less of that sort of strict behavior in especially in Central and South American countries. So traffic can kind of get a little extra while you're around, but we got through all the traffic. By the time we got to the city of Cartago, we were pretty hungry, but we also still had like an hour and a half. So it was like, well, we still have like an hour and a half until our appointment. Let's see if we can find some lunch.
So we were driving around Cartago trying to find a restaurant, and I was Googling it, and most of the places that we were trying to go were closed. It was a weird time of day. It was a little like early for lunch.
It was a little bit too early for lunch, but we were still hungry anyways because we'd been up for I think at that point we're 36 hours. So we were hungry.
Anyways, so we found one location that was open, looked really nice, and so we parked out in front of that.
Yeah.
But we were also confused about the parking situation because Cartago has not metered parking. It has an app.
There's an app. So and we did see somebody patrolling the parking. So if you do go to Cartago, we have T-Mobile for our phone service. T-Mobile provides us with international.
This is not
stuff.
A commercial.
It's not a commercial at all. It provides us international stuff. So we without any additional charges, we get internet on our phones and texting for free while we travel internationally.
In a number of destinations, not all.
It's like 110 countries or something. There are 105 countries that we get that sort of treatment.
You can say what you want about their cell phone service, but that is a really nice perk.
Honestly, their cell phone service sucks, but you get that perk of free international stuff. So it's for now, it's working out pretty good for us. But while we're there, I was trying to download the app, and it's not fast internet. It's 256K, which is fairly slow internet, and it took forever to download the parking app. By the time I finally downloaded the parking app, we had already gotten our food and got back in the car. So, if you are gonna park for a while, there's an app for that. There's 5 cities in Costa Rica that use the same app, so it would be useful to have the app. I can't remember what the name of the app was called, but it's a parking app, pretty simple to use, and it costs just like a couple bucks to park, and then you get a park for however long you're there for.
So anyways, we ordered our food to go, and then stood outside and just made sure...
And watched the car the whole time.
Yeah, watched the car the whole time.
Waiting for somebody to come by and ticket me.
Yeah. So got the food to go, and then we decided, hey, let's, find a nice place to eat. And so I was looking at eBird, trying to find a location nearby. And the Lancaster Botanical Gardens were just right around the corner. So we drove over there, parked in the parking lot, and had our lunch, which was fantastic.
Yes, it was very good.
I don't really remember what I got, what it was called. I think it was kind of like a breakfast for lunch situation, but it was in a giant tortilla, and it had like eggs and this delicious like baked cheese and a pork chop and gallo pinto.
Yeah, and then you had to fool me into eating your whole cheese.
I took one bite and I was like, "Hey Eric, try this cheese."
And you held the cheese out on a fork as one chunk.
It was like...
And I looked at it and I was like, that's a big chunk for a mouthful, but okay.
It was like 2 inches long by like... It was like square, like 2 inches by 2 inches. And you just housed the whole thing. It was like, I was balancing this like,
If you wanted me to take just a small bite of it, you should have cut a little small bite off.
No, that was the problem, is that I was like trying to balance it, and it was like a cardboard, container, so it's not sturdy. Like, I couldn't cut it because it was like baked.
Because we were trying to balance it on your lap?
Yeah, exactly. And so I just got one little chunk of that delicious cheese.
But you held your fork over with a giant 3-pound block of cheese on the end of it, and I was like, okay, I guess that's a big bite, but whatever.
It was really good cheese.
And then I just ate it as one bite. Yeah, it was very good cheese.
I can't remember what you had.
I don't remember what I had. That's all I remember about lunch. I remember it was delicious. I ate everything I had. I ate the whole plate, and I ate most of your block of cheese.
You got like like a enmolada.
Oh, it was, yeah. It was like an enchilada in mole.
Yeah.
And it was pretty good.
Yeah. So definitely recommend that place. Don't remember what it's called, but it's in Cartago and it's really cute.
Yeah, right on the main drag, right before you get to the big church in town.
Yeah, and then take it over to the Jardín Botánico de Lancaster to enjoy it and go into the Botanica.
Yeah, so we finished eating our lunch and went into the Botanic Garden because, like I said, we still had some time. We still had like another 45 minutes before we needed to be to where we were going. It's
a little expensive, but it's a fantastic garden.
It was like $20 a person?
I think so. Yeah.
No. It was $10 a person because it costs like $20.
Yeah.
$20 US.
So, yeah, it's a lovely botanical garden that's part of the University of Costa Rica, and it's a major center for orchid research in both Central America and in the Caribbean. Yeah,
so Charles Lancaster, who it's named after, he moved to Costa Rica way back, early 1900s, 1910, from England, and he went to Costa Rica to collect orchids. He was very big on orchids and epiphytes, so he moved there and started sending back specimens back to England. For years he did this.
Yeah, and so after being in Costa Rica for a few years, he eventually bought a coffee farm that had a huge lagoon on it that attracted a lot of migratory birds, and he kept that section of the property wild for orchids and other tropical plants. But eventually he sold the coffee plantation section of it, kept the wild part, and after his death, his daughter inherited that piece of property and then sold it off to the university under the conditions that it's kept as a botanic garden.
Yeah, so now it's 27 acres, and there are 3,000 species of plants that are documented on this property. Many of which are epiphytes and orchids and bromeliads, because that's what he was really interested in. That's what he was kind of collecting and gathering together. But something that I thought was interesting is that it's the only official Japanese garden in Costa Rica is within the Botanic Gardens. Back in 2009, the Japanese government donated the garden to the Botanic Garden. So
yeah, which is really interesting. But it also had I didn't really get to go explore this at all, but it had a really cool building, which must be like its research lab.
Yeah.
Inside the gardens.
Well, it was like a research area, and then there was also like a whole presentation, like a little amphitheater thing inside.
Oh, okay.
But it was all the glass, a big huge wall of glass. So you're like, oh man, it's a giant wall of glass. This is awful. But completely covered in feather friendly dots, and then they also had the little they're like they're the vinyl stickers, you
The
know.
hawks.
Well, no, not the hawks. It had identifiable, like it had like a big, like 2 foot tall mott that was on the outside of the window. That was just
cool.
it was just a white representation of it, but then dots completely covering the window. So the whole window was completely covered. I've got some photos. They'll be in our. We'll post them on Facebook for this episode. But the whole window was completely covered with an adequate number of feather friendly dots to be effective. And then interspersed among those dots were these things, and it would say like the name of the bird with a picture of the bird, and
That's cool.
just over the whole thing. So it was really cool.
Yeah, and the birding there was fantastic. We really didn't get to spend that much time there, and I would love to spend more time also earlier in the morning.
I think we explored like half of the grounds, maybe.
Yeah.
Or half of the trails that were there.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of different sections of the park. I don't even think that we got to the Japanese garden section.
We walked past it. We didn't go in it.
Okay, but we walked in and got to like a dense tropical forest that was very mosquito-y. We also met a cat who joined us he toured us around.
He toured us around for a bit.
Yeah, but just right off the bat, we were seeing, parakeets in the trees and the palms that were right
next to the entrance.
Yeah, and then there were a couple of gray-breasted woodwrens, and we got a lifer there.
Yeah, a Cabanis's wren, which was we ended up seeing a bunch of these while we were in Costa Rica. But it was a lifer. It was when we were at Lancaster Gardens. It was our lifer, Cabanis's wren. Really, really interesting small little guy that's a wren.
Yeah,
and very vocal. So I feel like it's like the vocalist wren, the vocalist
most
vocal wren that they have down in that area. So it's all over the place.
Yeah. We also had blue vented hummingbird right at the exit, which was a lifer for us. But yeah, walking through was, like I said, very mosquito-y. And then we ended up getting to like a succulent garden, which was kind of neat because some of it was like behind glass, but like outside.
Yeah, because I think
they were like just giant display cases outside.
Yeah, it was interesting. I don't know. Well, it was like supposed to be desert. So I wonder if it was they had the glass there to keep it less humid inside.
Could be.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but yeah, some outdoor display cases of cactuses and succulents.
Yeah,
which is interesting.
And that's where the Cabanis's wrens were hopping around inside one of the yucca.
What yuccas, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean there was like 5 or 6 of them that were playing around in there. We could never really get like a good look at any of them, which is always super frustrating.
Yeah, but they were just hopping and hopping and running and hopping and running and hopping. And then a golden hooded tanager up in the trees above us, which that was our first tanager of the trip. So it was like, oh, tanager. So it was very, very exciting, especially for Hannah.
I love tanagers.
She's a tanager. Love her.
She's a tanager.
She's a tanager.
I'm just a tanager.
You're just a tanager.
Hannah tanager.
Yeah, that's it. So we wandered around. It was hot. It was afternoon-ish, but it was the kind of hot where it's like I feel like a thunderstorm is coming.
Yeah.
And it was getting very muggy, and we were like, well, let's get back in the car.
Yeah.
and go back.
Or
not go back, but continue on to our destination.
But that was right when we got up to the exit, and there was that blue vented hummingbird right there.
Oh, I know.
Which was fantastic.
Sweat running down my back and running down my face, and it's like, oh, this guy's so cool.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we had to be adults and get back in the car and go off to the cafe for our tour.
Yeah, so we go up to Finca Cristina. The
Finca translates to estate.
Estate, yeah. So we get to the plantation, the Cristina plantation, and it was interesting. The entrance is hard to see.
Oh yeah.
As you're driving, we ended up driving right past it, and I was like, oh shoot, that was it. But it's a very small sign that says Finca Cristina, or I think it says Cafe. I think it says Cafe Cristina on the sign. Turn down, and it's a very narrow single track road that goes in right to a little small parking area. We got there, and there was a tour was just finishing up when we got there, so kind of stood around, waited for a few minutes, and then Ernesto, kind of just popped out of nowhere. Like,
Well, it was weird. When we first got there, there was like an older couple that was sitting down, and then the tour participants, I don't know, they were like maybe 4 or 5, like 20-something-year-old Americans, and then there was like a teenager, like, I don't know, maybe 14 or 15-year-old teenager that was kind of giving them the rundown on everything, and and so the 20-something-year-olds, they left, and we were sitting there talking to the owners of the property, and then this teenager, and I was like, is this Ernesto? Like, is he the one giving all these tours and everything? But no, it was Ernesto's nephew, who actually lives in New Jersey, and he comes down during summer and different holidays to help out at the family coffee farm, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, so we talked to them for a little bit, and then Ernesto came up, and Ernesto he does a lot of work with different organizations. So he's part of a Cerulean Warbler research project.
I think he was doing one on wood thrushes too.
And he's got I think he works with the coordinator for all the MODA stations around Costa Rica and around that area. So he's like, when we traveled around the rest of Costa Rica, the whole time everyone that we talked to knew Ernesto.
Yeah,
so I was like, okay, well,
that was funny.
We ended up going to the right place then, I guess.
He knew everybody and everybody knew him. Yeah, so
he's funny. He's very tied into the birding community in Costa Rica.
It's interesting what a tight-knit community it is. Yeah. It's not a ginormous country, but it's a pretty good-sized country, and it's hard to travel around.
It takes time to get places.
Yeah, so that was just really cool that, we actually ended up knowing a lot of the same people.
Yeah.
And he just does some really cool work, which, as we learned, because he took us on a very extensive coffee tour, which was fascinating and included a lot of information about what they do to be bird friendly, which I'm sure Eric will mention in just a moment. But it was so cool to hear about how it also allows him free time to be able to do all these different things. Like, we own a family-owned business, so we know how that functions, and there's a lot that goes into it, and you don't have weekends, and you don't have a lot of
nothing's a regular schedule.
Exactly.
So it's you may have a lot of free time, but it's not the regular free time you think you have, or that you would normally have as a regular working a 9-to-5 job. Like all of our friends that work regular jobs, it's like, okay, well, they have a weekend, whether it's Tuesday, Wednesday, or whether it's Saturday, Sunday. They have 2 days off every single week. But we, on the other hand, this seem to be similar for Ernesto, you're working 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, for periods of time.
Yeah.
And then you'll have random chunks of time where it's like, well, there's nothing to do.
The coffee is growing. There's nothing I can do.
For us, everyone's checked in. Like, there's times where there isn't anything that's pressing, so then you can take up additional tasks. You can take up additional things. And Ernesto, all of his additional things are birding research related stuff.
Mine is with reading birding books. Yours is city politics.
I guess so.
Anyways, so it was really cool to hear about all of the different projects that he's involved in, and how his farm has been a huge part of like the education and what we learn about birds. Because it is located in the middle of a major flyway for neotropical migrants, and it provides really important breeding and wintering habitats for them.
Yeah, so he basically he took us into the park, and something that was interesting, he also is partnered with COA. So he walked up to us and he's got his same exact binoculars as us, and we're like, oh. And we're like, oh, and we both know the same people at COA, and it's like, oh.
How have we not met before?
How have we not met you before? But now we have. Now we've met Ernesto, been to his family plantation, and got the whole coffee tour from him.
And just as a heads up, if you go and you do this, because he says he runs 2 tours a day, he's busy like all the time doing tours, which is really cool. And I imagine most of them are about coffee specifically, but once he found out we were birders, it was a hybrid coffee bird tour. So
exactly.
Just let him know, like, you're a birder.
For sure, yeah. So he gave us.
We sent you them.
Yes, tell them that we sent you. But so he started off given the regular tour. He went through how they don't use fertilizer, that they don't use pesticide, they don't use herbicide. They grow their own proprietary fungus that they use to treat other funguses. There's all these different things that they do. And he also gave us a reminder that coffee is not native to the Americas. It initially came from Africa, and that's why it doesn't have very many predators in the Americas. There's only a couple of things that try to kill it.
Predators in the form of insects.
Predators in the form of insects or funguses and stuff like that. Not many things eat it, and because that's caffeine. The interesting thing is caffeine is like a poison. It kills things, and we tolerate it as humans. It probably is poisoning us. That's why our heart starts racing, and why we suddenly get like the spike in energy from the caffeine.
I hadn't really considered that.
It's a toxin that other things don't eat, so that's why most insects don't eat it. There's two different varieties of coffee plants, the Robusta and the Arabica, and the Robusta has higher caffeine content in the plant in total, and so it's a more bitter plant, and it's much more resilient to insects, and because it's got even more caffeine than the Arabica plant. So he went through this whole. It was great. We've been through a couple coffee tours before, but none that really focused on
like the science,
the ecology of the plants and how they interact with the environment around them, which they don't interact a lot, but they're part of the environment now that we as humans have planted them all over the place.
And right about the time that he was telling us all about this fungus situation, there was a mistletoe tyrant that was calling right above us. So that was exciting because that was a lifer.
A mistletoe tyrant.
Eric actually got a pretty good picture of it.
Yeah, I think I did all right.
Yeah. And we continue down the slope. So his plantation is sloped down to like a was there a creek or just a like dry?
It was a wet spot when we were down there.
Yeah, and so as we were like moving towards it, there was a common toddy flycatcher, also a lifer, which was pretty exciting. But lots of swallows flying around, blue and white swallows, which I love that name, blue and white swallow.
Blue and white swallow.
Yeah, it's so sweet.
I mean, most of the time, every time we see them, or every time I've seen them, it's just kind of like they're a swallow that is they're flying around, and there's white clouds behind them. They're really backlit, but I imagine they're pretty.
I always think of them like tree swallows.
Yeah, very much.
I mean,
so.
That would be a good name for a tree swallow.
It would be a good name for the tree swallows.
But he was also telling us a lot about the history of coffee in Costa Rica, how there was a boom at one point in time and just tons of different coffee plantations. And a lot of those have sort of subsided because the demand isn't there anymore. As much. And so some of them still persist, and most of them are trying to move towards doing things more ecologically friendly because, there's people that are interested in that, and it's also just better for their properties to be in that way, not using the pesticides and the herbicides and all of that.
So almost all of the plantations in that area, and most of not all of them, but a lot of them in Costa Rica are at least shade grown coffee. So they plant these really tall, fast growing trees that have very soft wood that they can plant. They'll grow up, cast shade across the entire plantation, and then when the plants need full sun, they chop them down, they prune them back. And the coffee trees will then get the sun they need, and then the shade tree will then grow right back within a couple of months. So it's this whole cycle of just constantly doing that. But these plants are also legumes, and so they're nitrogen fixing trees that help bring about fertilization to the plants and to everything that's there. It's this whole like weird faux ecosystem that they've created. At Finca Cristina, they've taken it up a step, and they're diversifying everything that's there. So they've got a couple more they're just kind of every year it seems. He was explaining to us that they plant a little bit more diversity, and so they have all these coffee plants, but then every single year the diversity of shade plants increases, and they prune them back a little bit, and it's basically every single year it gets better.
Yeah.
And this is the way he was explaining it to us, is that it originally started off as just a regular coffee plantation that they had been using fertilizer, I guess, back when his parents first purchased the property, and then they or fertilizer and herbicides. And then they were like, you know what, this is why? Let's go away from that. There was a big push to go shade grown, organic. So then everyone in Costa Rica was trying to do that. There wasn't a lot of money in that market. So then some places went back to the herbicides. Some places were like, well, we can struggle along how we are. And this is how they went. And because it was a family owned place, they didn't need to, they didn't have a lot of overhead. It was just basically all the people that came to pick, the expert pickers that come and do that stuff. So they were able to make it kind of work. But they really have leaned heavily into the shade grown and the all organic situation on their property. So it's, like I said, diversifying. Every single year they pluck out some of the monocultured shade plants that they have and just plop in more of the diversity of other trees within that area. And the different trees provide different stuff to it. And he was explaining to us about how the bigger diversity of trees gives you a bigger diversity of insects. Bigger diversity of insects gives you more diversity of birds. And so he can look at the bird diversity on the property and have a pretty good idea of how well the coffee is going to do because of all the other stuff. It's a holistic approach to the coffee plantation as opposed to making a focus on the coffee itself.
Well, and what also makes it really interesting is his dad was a geologist.
Yeah,
and so
completely he's not a farmer. he didn't start off as a farmer. He was a geologist before owning this plantation.
Yeah, and so they all use a lot of science when it goes into this, which is really cool. And Ernesto was experimenting a lot with different things going on in the farm. Mm-hmm. He also was trying to grow vanilla, mm-hmm. which was
successfully growing vanilla.
Yeah, that's true. He's trying to figure out bottling it though.
Yeah.
Which it was a really cool experience. He also took us around to see, the rest of the processing of mm-hmm. coffee. So, the drying and all of the other steps that go into it.
Yeah, they do the whole thing on site. So they have a roaster, they have the entire thing to dry and then shell, and like they have the entire process to get the fruit ready to be roasted and then roast it. So they've got the whole situation.
Yeah, so he brought us a couple cups of coffee afterwards from their own stash, which was fantastic. Mm-hmm. And it was just beautiful to stand there. As Eric had said, it felt like a rainstorm was coming in, and so it kind of hit right when we were going in to have a cup of coffee. Mm-hmm. So, the rain was pitter-pattering on the roof, and we were enjoying hot coffee and, the bird song. So it's just a really pleasant experience.
Yeah. And real quick about coffee in Costa Rica or in any Central American country, and I think we talked about this a little bit when we were in Colombia, but usually when you go to places that grow coffee, you don't get to drink good coffee. You drink whatever kind of the lowest quality coffee that they're growing is what you're drinking when you're in the country, because the high quality coffee is the exportable stuff, the stuff that's going to make them the family money, it's going to make the country money. And so that's what they're doing. They're sending their good stuff to other countries, to China, to US, to Europe, so that they can make money on that coffee. It's kind of a weird juxtaposition that you're in a place that grows the best coffee, whether it's Colombian coffee or if you're in somewhere in Africa getting some Ethiopian coffee, or if you're in Costa Rica, like you're where they're growing good coffee.
Yeah, you go to Starbucks and you see all the bags of coffee sitting on the counter,
and you're like, I want to go to that country there. Like, yeah, but you go there, and that the reason you're not drinking that coffee is because they're making money by sending it to places like Starbucks and stuff. So it's not. You get kind of disappointed when you're drinking coffee. They had some pretty good coffee we had, but you end up disappointed. But it's also different that fruit, you get really, really good fruit, and it's because the fruit that they export, the fruit that they keep versus the fruit that they export is just visually different. So the fruit may just look bad, but it still tastes just as good. So you still get really, really good fresh fruit. We had this whole conversation with Ernesto about how the fruit's still really good because a pineapple's a pineapple. It's just whether or not it looks good or not.
I don't think I was listening to you guys.
Oh yeah, maybe you were looking at a bird or something. But a pineapple's a pineapple. It's going to be good or not good. It just kind of looks good or not. Versus coffee, which is either high quality coffee that you're going to make money on, or low quality coffee that is just going to be something that you can drink. So it was an interesting conversation about that. And I think we talked about it a little bit when we were in Colombia.
Yeah, and it's a fantastic birding location too. We were there later in the day, and with the thunderstorm, there wasn't a whole lot of birds out, but we still ended up with a couple lifers, including that mistletoe tyrannulate and gray-crowned yellowthroat. Yeah. So yeah, it was like I said, it was a fun experience, and I encourage folks to get out and learn more if you are able to, because it's nice to know the processes behind these things.
Yeah, for sure. So we got back in the car, headed back to San Jose, into all the traffic, because the next morning we were going to be meeting with Ruth from the Jacanas and Herbert Biruhenga from Uganda and Lisa Erb to talk about the International Conference for Women Birders, which will be taking place in Costa Rica next year. So we kind of had to get back to San Jose and go back to the city.
Yeah, and we decided on Hotel Bougainvillea because we've heard so many things about it. Like, all of the birders recommended it, but also the weird thing is my uncle, who is not a birder,
and has only been to Costa Rica a couple of times.
Well, he's been to Costa Rica a couple of times.
Yeah.
He owns a random, lot somewhere in Costa Rica. Anyways, we were talking about going. He's like, "Oh, you should stay at Hotel Bougainvillea." And it's like, "What? Why do you know about it?"
Yeah.
Anyways,
all the birders are suggesting it. You don't bird. Why are you suggesting it?
Yeah. So we eventually, after a long time in traffic, made our way over to the Hotel Bougainvillea, which is on kind of the northeast side of San Jose. So it's on the outskirts a little bit.
It's on the opposite side of town from the airport, which is also interesting. Like, why did your uncle suggest it? Because it's not even close to the airport. It's a ways away from the. It's a drive away from the airport.
Yeah,
like it seems weird that he would drive that far away from the airport to then stay at a hotel.
Anyways, so when we got into check-in, we kind of said, "Oh, we're birders," and they suggested that we try to check out the mottled owl that is in the bamboo stand over by the pool. And so we went to the restaurant, had a couple of beers and a snack, and then went in search of the owl. The property has extensive botanical gardens and a pool, meeting rooms, ponds, lots of stuff to explore. We searched around the bamboo and didn't end up hearing or seeing anything. So headed to bed.
We're also pretty tired still because we still hadn't slept. At this point, we're still up. We're still running from cleaning hotel rooms, got on the plane. I guess we napped on the plane and then went birding. Went on a coffee tour, and then drove all the way back into San Jose. It was still one full day.
You all know, no sleep club.
No sleep club. So then it was like, well, it was like 10 o'clock, I think, by then.
Yeah.
It was 8 o'clock. And we were like, let's just go to bed. It's tired. We're not seeing birds. So first thing in the morning, we wake up. The sunrise in Costa Rica this time of year is early. It's light outside by 5 a.m. ish. Yeah, it was like 5 a.m. It was light. Sunrise was like at 5:20 or something.
So the next morning, the great kiskadee calling off the balcony and parrots, those all woke me up, which is better than any kind of alarm that you could ever have.
It's an effective alarm.
Yeah. So we quickly got ready to bird and toured around the gardens, and immediately out the door, we saw a Lessons motmot. There was also rufous crowned sparrows and a few parrots flying overhead.
Yeah, so parrots are, for me, super difficult. Like, they're until they land. Once they land, you can look at them and you're like, oh, I can tell what that is. All right, we figured it out. It's this or that or whatever parrot or parakeet you're looking at. But while they're flying, when we were up at Rancho Naturalista, our guide was telling us, oh yeah, you can tell this call. It sounds like this, and I know that like when we're in the Rio Grande Valley, I can tell the differences between the different
parrots and the parakeets.
The parrots and the parakeets.
Yeah.
I can't tell the difference between the parrots. There isn't enough of the other. There's just red crowns and then a couple other random ones. But like he was like, oh yeah, it's that. And then as soon as it would land, it would be obvious that that's what it is. And so you can tell them apart audibly. But for me, it was just waiting until they landed somewhere to see them.
So we ran into some other birders who were in the gardens, and they pointed out a stationary squirrel cuckoo to us, which was really cool to see that. Cool. But they were kind of like,
it was like the most ugly, ruffled up sort of. He must have just taken a bath or something.
But they were like, "What else have you seen?" And we were like, "Oh my gosh, we saw Lessons motmot," and they were like, "Yeah, it lives here." I was like, Okay, well, I'm sorry I said anything.
Sorry.
I love motmots. No matter how many times I see them, they're the coolest birds.
Yeah.
So anyways, by that squirrel cuckoo was towards the back of the wall of the property. There was a tree there that was full of blue-gray tanagers.
Yeah.
And the property is really interesting because the hotel takes up barely any of it, but the grounds are pretty extensive.
Yeah.
And also behind the back wall, there seems to be like a fairly undeveloped portion. So that was pretty good too, with like tropical kingbirds. And eventually, later on, a Hoffman's woodpecker was back there too. And there's also a really nice little conference room there, which seems so private and really nice just to, be able to ignore whatever conference is going on and look out the back door at these trees. So we went to breakfast, put ourselves together, and headed back out to bird a little bit. And it's funny how much a 1 hour difference can make with the bird composition that was out there. So Eric was like brushing his teeth, and I ditched him and went back outside. And there were a couple of brown jays in the tree just like right up by the front that had suddenly appeared, which they're not like a rare or unusual species there, but because we've, in the Rio Grande Valley, it's such a big deal that the brown jays are at the ranch that it just seemed like really exciting to see them.
Yeah, so we talked about this a little bit with our guide that we had when we were at Rancho, is like some birds just hold a special place with you, and brown jays kind of are holding that special place. For me, it's also interesting that clay-colored thrushes also hold that special place where it's like, it's still such an interesting bird, even though it's the national bird of Costa Rica, and they're everywhere.
Yeah.
And the same thing now in the Rio Grande Valley, they're everywhere, but when we first moved there, it wasn't. And so then it was kind of like, oh, it's this super, super interesting thing. Like, I really want to see this cool bird. And then you're seeing it and you're like, oh, it's so cool. Look, you take some photos and you get all excited about it. And then forever, that bird holds a special place of being interesting.
Yeah.
And brown jays are definitely in that category of birds that are just like, oh, that's really interesting. Even though it's not an uncommon bird down there, not really that interesting looking, they're jays, so they kind of just behave like jays. They do all the jay stuff. But it still holds a special place. It's like, oh, that's so cool. Look at that guy.
I think they look like a land-based brown booby.
I can see that, yeah. Land-based brown booby.
Yeah. It's like how they're, like, people call dogs, like, land seals.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a land brown booby.
Okay. Yeah, so I missed those brown jays, but I got out there and we kind of started wandering around, and I started chasing a motmot that was calling, and
that's what it was.
I wanted to try to get a recording of it, and then all of a sudden I get a text from I'm holding my phone out, like way out in front of me, like trying to get a recording, and then all of a sudden my phone makes a big loud noise, do 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 do, as it get a text, and it just says "lifer" across it, and I'm like, what? So then I'm like, I don't know what Han means about this. So
what do you mean you don't know what I mean?
Well, I know you meant lifer, but I didn't know where you were.
Yeah.
And so then I'm like, all right, well, I'm just going to turn around and head back the way I came. And you were over by the gazebo, and there was a chestnut cap warbler.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, thank. And it was still there when I got there, so I was like, oh, thank goodness.
Yeah.
But yeah, that big loud doo 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 as I'm trying to record things, I was like, oh, ooh, okay.
Nothing better than a lifer text. But the site itself the hotel is just pretty fantastic. You can spend all day just exploring their grounds, and different birds will come and go throughout it. And I can really see why a lot of people recommended this hotel.
Yeah. And the accommodation's really nice. It was comfortable bed. It's in a part of Costa Rica that it's not like super hot. It's not like down by the like beach, I guess, or like lower elevation and stuff. It's a high enough elevation that it was nice and cool. So I don't think there was AC in the room. There's some fans.
Yeah, I think fans.
But it was nice and comfortable while we were there. And the beds were comfortable. Breakfast was delicious. They had all the stuff Hannah mentioned, the gallo pinto and all that. The hotel's clean and all that. So it's definitely a recommended hotel. Yeah.
So our time ran out. We had to hustle back to meet with Herbert, Lisa, and Ruth to talk about the International Conference for Women Birders. So had a great meeting on that. So really looking forward to being back in Costa Rica for the conference.
Yeah. Yeah, and then from there we headed back to our episode from last week. Up to Rancho Naturalista. So if you want to hear about Rancho, go back and listen to the last one, or if you already heard it, then I guess
Kudos to you.
Kudos to you, and this
Thank
is
you
where
for
we're
listening.
at. Yeah. So thank you guys all for listening to our podcast. We hope you enjoyed it and or learned something new. Please, please, please rate, review, and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Music, or anywhere else you listen to us. If you would like to connect with us on the socials, you can follow us at Hannah Goes Birding and Eric Goes Birding on Instagram. You can follow our Facebook page at Hannah and Eric Go Birding. You can shoot us an email at hannahanderic@gmail.com. You can also check out our website, www.gobirdingpodcast.com. Tell us what you think and share the love of birding with your friends.